What does this look like to you? This image was all the rave in 2022, when the Amarillo Zoo in Texas decided to tweet an image from a CCTV video showing what looks like a strange person or creature walking around the fence of the zoo in the early hours of the morning. The Amarillo Zoo captured a strange image outside the zoo in the dark and early morning hours of May 21st, around 1:25 a.m. The zoo management was confused about what it was and decided to involve the public, hoping for some answers. The city took it up and asked its followers, and basically the rest of the world, for ideas as to what this might be. And the crazy thing is, it's almost been 2 years since that time, and still no one knows what it is. This image still remains one of the biggest mysteries the city of Texas has encountered. Ever since the image was released, the news went viral, with multiple news stations showing the image.
Well, a strange creature has been spotted outside the Amarillo Zoo, and it's not an animal, it's not exactly a human. Take a look. Security cameras captured what appears to be a wolf man walking around the property. City officials say this image is real, and they're baffled by its mysterious appearance. So now they're asking for the public's input to figure out what the heck is it. Some have suggested it could be chupacabra, that mythical beast-like predator that's become an urban legend. And others are calling this guy a UAO, as an unidentified Amarillo object.
He caught on camera a mystery in Texas. What is this strange figure that people are trying to figure out?
Yeah, so there's aliens now, there's monkeypox. What about Wolfman? Yeah, this is really, you guys, sometimes this job is just too much. It's trying me today. Here's some video though.
This one is trying you today?
Yeah, it's trying me. This is from Amarillo, Texas. It shows an unknown figure walking around a perimeter fence at the Amarillo Zoo. The creature is wolf-like, I guess.
Though some were reporting the news as a form of ridicule, while others were concerned. But despite the country's, if not worldwide, coverage of this creature, no one in any part of the world could confidently come out and say, "I know what this is." All we have so far are theories. If you were to check some of the comments made on the posts, you'd see some comments like Sonic the Hedgehog, Weasel from the Suicide Squad, and the usual "it's my ex-wife" comments. I won't lie, some comments made me chuckle. But while digging for answers, I came across a comment that was interesting and looked like it could be the answer to what this image was. At first, I brushed it off, but looking at it deeper, I started to see the similarities. This is an image of what's known as a skinwalker. This is another drawing of a more terrifying one. Now, just by looking at it, we can see similarities. And if you still can see it, this is a side-by-side comparison of the two images. Now, do you see the resemblance? Then I dug deeper to know what a skinwalker is, and this is what I found. The skinwalker originates from the Navajo, or the Nail mythology, and it is basically a bad person, or to be more specific, a bad witch doctor, that has the ability to turn into any animal. They can transform, possess, or disguise themselves as any animal of their choosing. One can only become a skinwalker by killing someone they love, or by committing a very heinous act of murder. That's when they get the power. The Navajo people strongly believe the skinwalkers exist, and they blame the skinwalkers for everything and anything that went wrong, including failed crops, sickness, sudden deaths, and even bad marriages. Now, depending on who you ask or how your research goes, for some, the skinwalkers actually transform into the animal, while others believe they don't transform, but by wearing the skins of the animal they want, they get the ability of that animal. So it's their physical ability and their mind that is transforming. That's why this image looks like this. One thing is certain in both theories: they are hard to get rid of or kill, and according to legend, they have to keep killing, or they will die. At first, I kind of shrugged it off, because killing that many people would definitely bring some kind of policing on any person, and that area. So, in other words, it's not possible. Then a thought crossed my mind. The killing rule or criteria never said anything about them killing a human being. Of course, there's no way Skinwalker would be mentioned without Skinwalker Ranch not being mentioned. We have a whole video about Skinwalker Ranch and the crazy things happening in that area. But why I brought up Skinwalker Ranch in this story is because, before its Hollywood publicity and marketing scheme for tourists, it was actually a dreaded area with reports of the deaths of animals and livestock. It was so bad that being a herder was a dangerous job because you could lose all your herd in less than a year, running you into debt. Until now, no one knows what was causing the deaths of these animals. People could see the marks and evisceration on the corpses. So this wasn't a case of a disease killing off the cows. Something was killing this animal for food. And despite the police, sheriff, and even the FBI being included in all these cases, they couldn't find anything. Now, you might be wondering what the connection is between Skinwalker Ranch and the Amarillo Zoo. Well, nothing. Until I came upon a story from a supposed zookeeper at the zoo. According to the zookeeper, what he saw that night terrified him, and he has made posts about it on other social media platforms. Still, no one takes him seriously because it's social media, and honestly, I didn't want to consider his story. But Motech is about one thing, and that's presenting all the details. And I mean all the details, no matter how far-fetched or where it was found. And then, from gathering all the details from both critics and believers, make a justifiable conclusion. Or better yet, let you guys come up with your conclusion in the comments sections. So with respect to that, this is what I came across. According to this person, despite the brave face the Amarillo Zoo is putting up, and the jokes that are coming out of it, they are very scared about the whole event. All this apparently started 2 months prior to the picture date. It was pretty late at night, around 11 p.m., after closing time. He was filling the feed in the exotic bird area when he noticed 2 or 3 parrots were dead. This was concerning to them. Even though the Amarillo Zoo is famous, that doesn't necessarily mean they have a lot of money. And losing animals can be a big blow to revenue since it can cost a lot to replace them. He told the other zookeepers about it, and they decided to search the cage to be sure there wasn't a virus that was spreading and killing the birds, but they found nothing. They even did some sort of autopsy to once again be on the safe side, but nothing was found. No poisons, no evidence of illness, not so much as a feather out of place. They just died. At first, management didn't care if 3 birds died. They still had a healthy amount. But a couple of weeks later, the zookeepers found more dead animals, and now it was no longer birds but goats, and in the same manner as the birds. So, they increased security and started keeping an eye on visitors. They started making more routine announcements to the visitors, not to feed the animals. More security cameras were installed, and they took turns watching the security footage at night. But despite these new changes and personnel, the deaths didn't stop. More animals were dying, and nobody could see what or who was causing it. The animals were clearly stressed, and some even stopped eating regularly. Some animals just went straight up missing, and this was becoming a problem for them. They involved the police, who sent just a few cops, like 1 or 2 officers, to also assist and keep watch, and hopefully find some of the missing animals. Just like a twisted answer to their prayers, they found some of the missing animals, to be precise, what was left of them. They found their skins lying around on the sidewalk next to the zoo's door. The ID tags that were on the animal were how they knew the animal belonged to the zoo. The police were present throughout the night, but they said they didn't see anything. Everyone was confused. The next day, but at night, they heard someone screaming. It was around 2 a.m., and the security guard was running for his life. He's shouting for the cops and is shaking all over. He said he saw something huge and terrifying climb over the wall to the lion exhibit. They didn't believe him, so he took them to the place. When they got there was nothing, just darkness. So they went back to check the security footage and still saw nothing. At first, their brain rationalized what they thought the security man must have seen. So some of them said it was a wild animal. But then after that night, they started finding organs in the enclosure, intestines on the floor, and eyeballs in some places. Basically, the whole zoo was getting littered with parts of dead animals. The animals were all acting strange. Animals that were normally friendly just stayed where they were sleeping, even when they were fed, afraid to go out. At this point, the zookeepers were getting worried, and the cops sent more officers to patrol the zoo at night. Then, on May 21st, they saw it. At first, he was watching the cameras with a security guard, and that's when they saw the infamous Wolfman. At first, the image kind of reminded our whistleblower of that coyote guy who was walking around with a coyote skin during the 2021 Capitol riots in DC. This guy. But on further inspection, the creature looked strange. Its limbs stood out like they were an animal, yet they were still strangely human. He also noticed the creature was holding something, like some kind of stick, and then was doing this weird freezing, jerking motion where it would pace, and then freeze and stay perfectly still. They called the police, and the police arrived, going straight for the fence. And this is when things turned into a supernatural episode.
The police decide to split up, and they point their guns at it. They start yelling at it to stop right where it is, and not to move, and that it was under arrest. Thing starts heaving. They get their flashlights out and point it at this thing. It's the scariest shit I've ever seen in my life. Eyes totally devoid of color, just milky white like some kind of demon. Sharp ass teeth. I begin to wonder if that security guy was right after all. Maybe it was some sort of werewolf. But I've had time to think about it, and the moon wasn't full that day. It sounds effing childish and dumb, but when you've seen something so unexplainable to you, start reaching for straws trying to figure it out. So the thing is making this jittery movement, and it starts to sound this rattling. Sort of like when you hear sprinklers go off in your yard. Thing is furry as hell, and the police start yelling louder, cause it's moving towards the officers on the other side of the fence. It starts screaming, and it was the most god-awful sound. Like boiling a puppy alive. The officers are terrified like we all were, and they start shooting at it. I've never seen anything like it. Thinking about it now makes me want to cry, like seriously.
According to the person, the police shot the creature multiple times, but the creature just shrugged it off, like a bad low-budget headache. The officers realize their guns are useless against the creature and start backing away. They all ran inside, while the police called for backup. Meanwhile, the creature was jerking its way around the enclosure and making its way around the zoo. They waited in the security camera room, watching the security cameras and waiting for backup to arrive. They watch the creature walk in the zoo like it's nothing, and they can, to some extent, hear it screaming. Suddenly, just as they were watching it, the creature vanished. It was there, and then suddenly, it wasn't. The backup arrives, and they search the park, but they find nothing in the zoo. Officers take their stories. They checked the footage again, and they still have it on camera. They didn't have good footage of it inside the zoo, but the footage outside the fence was crystal clear. They were all scared. They still tried to rationalize what they saw, asking what kind of animal it was. Theories of werewolves, wolfmen, dogmen, aliens, monsters, demons, and much more were given, but one immediately stuck and kind of made sense to them. Another worker talked about how the creature fits everything about another creature he only heard in stories, and that's when he told them what they saw: a skinwalker. The footage found its way to the mayor's office and the police department, and they were all spooked. They watched the video multiple times, trying to come up with a rational explanation, but they were all stumped. According to the whistleblower, that's why the city of Amarillo tweeted out the image to see if anyone could figure it out. The only good news about all of this is that the weird stuff stopped happening after that night. like it knew it would be bad for business to revisit a hot site. And that was the end of that person's witness report. Now, it sounds engaging and, in a way, answers some questions that I originally had, like, why was only one image shown and not a video? But if this story was true, that would mean the video was kept somewhere or destroyed to avoid causing panic. Other theories place the creature as a chupacabra, which is kind of like the Sasquatch in the South. Its name means goat sucker in English, because it likes to eat animals. But after comparing both images side by side, I don't see the resemblance. Or maybe the creature is a chupacabra. I don't know anymore. It's really confusing, and it doesn't help that this is the only image we have of the creature. I really don't know why. With things like this, it's hard to get a really good image. It's like, whenever we encounter weird things, our tech reverts back to the tech of the 40s. And that's why a lot of people find it hard to believe this even existed in the first place. For all we know, it could be a Photoshop image, and after considering those people's proof, I'm inclined to also believe them.
Filming my computer screen with my phone instead of just doing a screen record. I'm going to draw my own Dogman monster real quick, and we don't need it to be too fancy. It doesn't have to be very detailed because you'll see what we're going to do to it. So let's just give him a little bit of chest, give him some arms, kind of try to make it look like the original over here next to it. Doesn't have to be perfect. So we got our dog man sketched out. He's even kind of standing in this weird sitting position like this other one. So what I'm going to do to this layer is I'm going to go over to the blend modes and I'm going to set it to overlay. Now soft light looks pretty accurate too compared to the original, but overlay is a closer match to the original. So then I'm going to put just a little bit of Gaussian blur on it. Sorry you guys can't see this, but I just want to stay focused on the creature that I've drawn. So just a little bit, like 1.0 blur, and then I'm going to drop the opacity down just a little bit so that it's kind of ambiguous. And then when you zoom in, check this out. It's identical. The fence texture is even visible. So when you zoom out, you can definitely see that it's allegedly shot through a fence. Now I did do a messy job on mine, but hopefully you can see the similarities between these two objects, and hopefully this describes pretty well how they accomplished this hoax image. It's a hoax. This is how they made it. Not very impressive, but so if you see this picture floating around, now you know the truth about it.
That was from a YouTube channel called Paranormally Correct. And after watching that, I couldn't tell the difference between what she drew and the original image. The image she drew looked so much like the creature's image that it could easily be it, making us wonder if the creature is nothing more but a compelling Photoshop project. To some people, this was all a form of marketing ploy, done by the zoo to get more visitors. I mean, it's no news that any site shrouded in mysteries or ufology becomes a hotbed for almost everyone. And if done right, the establishment can make money from curious visitors. This is the same train of thought that the owner of Skinwalker Ranch is trying to follow. They want to build a resort in that area around the theme of UFOs and skinwalkers and profit from it. The zoo could be doing the same thing. The tweet alone did more impressions, views, and engagement for the zoo than any ad will ever do. And I won't be surprised if more people visited the zoo or heard of the zoo just because of that image. It could also be a prank. This could be a zoo worker. They dressed in some kind of costume, went outside, and did things that couldn't be closely captured. At the same time, they made sure that they were obvious enough that other animals or people couldn't quickly ignore them. Then they walked around and said something like, "Hey, we haven't checked the game cameras in a while. Does anyone want to join me in this completely normal thing to do?" And that sounds plausible. Another thing is, why is there only one image? That alone bugs me on a personal level. There should be more, even though the remaining pictures might be blurry, but it should still be there. instead of just one shot. And when someone actually asked the zoo about this, their reply was, "The area pictured is on the far side of the bison enclosure, where there is a vast open space. As a result, we have game cameras around those 5 parameters, where there is a lack of internet. These are standard game cameras that take a shot when movement is detected. So that's why there's only one picture." Fair enough. If the camera takes images when there's motion, does that mean the creature just appeared, stayed for a selfie, and then disappeared? Shouldn't there be a continuous shot? As for the intriguing eyewitness account, the only thing we have as proof is the statement from the whistleblower on Reddit. We can't check if all that the writer said is true, or if the writer is just really a good writer. Even though the story has some plot holes and inconsistencies, I am willing to forgive that and tag it as some PTSD, but the fact that in the whole 2 years, no one has come out to corroborate with his story from the zoo or even the officers makes this story less believable. This is a civilian setting, so I don't think anyone is under threat from their boss not to talk. The only threat would be to lose your job, and you can still provide this information anonymously if you want to, like this guy did. And importantly, provide proofs, images, and even collaborators to your story to make it sound more authentic. But all that is missing, and all we have for authenticity is the headline. Of course, it could also be an animal, especially a coyote. It could be a coyote jumping the fence, rotating a bit right instead of directly facing the camera. It's probably blurry compared to the surroundings due to the speed of the coyote mid-jump and the low light and exposure time the camera has. In such, someone did a side-by-side analysis to support this reason. This is a reference image. The only issue I have with this notion is that it's based on a lot of maybe, could be, probably, and so on. So, if we are basing our logical solution on a maybe, then who are we to say the theories of maybe it was a skinwalker are wrong? The only convincing logical explanation I have heard concerning this image is that what we saw is a black bear. Not that kind of bear. This one. Honestly, I didn't know bears could look like this. I was shocked. And once again, when you do a side-by-side comparison, you see it. It looks like a bear standing, which they do, of course, before mauling their prey, and it not having too much fur to make it look like a bear, is because the bear is sick. This type of bear is a sick one, affected by a disease known as mange. Mange is a skin disease caused by different types of mites that affect wild animals. It is becoming more common in American black bears, which can cause severe loss of hair and skin damage that can lead to secondary infections and death from hypothermia. But this adds to the notion that whatever was seen could be a wild animal, or more specifically, a sick bear. A quick Google search of if bears are common in Amarillo actually did show that bears are common, and let's not forget, this is a city in Texas as well. In such, the very first thing I saw was a warning/post of increased wildlife sightings thanks to drought conditions. If animals are not getting the food they need, they go somewhere they can find one, or they fall sick before finding one. And the zoo has a lot of tasty options. Like I said earlier, this sounded more possible of being what the zoo saw. But a lot of people have also said some weird notions, like a human wearing a costume, a human backing another human, and so much more. But one thing is certain, whatever was seen is something no one can explain. This is why I'm left with my last option, asking you, what do you think this is?